Hello, my name is Cadet Private Keith Nolan, and today I'm going to talk to you about the military. So, how many of you think that you might want to join the military? Right? Just like me. So, growing up, I've always wanted to be in the military. I loved reading up on the military history, and I've even had some family members, like my grandfather and uncle, they were in the military, and they served their country, so I wanted to do the same. Do you think that I could? I can do that? No, I can't. And why might you think that is? Because of my deafness. Anyway, so inside of me, I have this deep want and desire to join the military. So back in high school, after I graduated, of course, 3 months before 9/11 happened, I went to a Naval Reserve Center, went in there, and um, and I met an officer there, and I couldn't read his lips when he was talking to me. So he ended up getting out a piece of paper, and he wrote 3 words on there: bad ear disqual. He didn't even spell out the full word disqualify. He just put bad ear disqual. So anyway, I tried different places and I would get the same response. Sorry, you can't, you're deaf. Over and over again. So I changed my life path. I ended up getting my master's in education and I did that, worked in there for about 2 years. And this past spring, I came up with 3 bullet points. So anyway, in my this one class I was teaching in, this history class during a spring semester, I sat down at my desk. A student came up to me who's also deaf, and he told me he would like to join the military. And I had to tell him, sorry, like that's not possible. You're deaf. And so I got to thinking, my entire life I was told, no, you can't join the military because you're deaf. Now I'm telling this next generation that they can't join because they're deaf. Another thing that happened that same semester is that a friend of mine in Israel, they allow deaf people in their military. Did y'all know that? They do. And how do you think that's possible? Like, come on. Like, they have deaf people in their military, and we don't. So I visited Israel last summer, talked to some people in their military, asked them a bunch of questions, and even their commander. And the third thing, at my school here, they finally set up an ROTC program. And ROTC is short for Reserve Officer Training Corps. And so while you're continuing education with college, you're also becoming prepared to become enlisted in the military. And so in this case would be with the Army. And when you, upon enlisting, you'd become a second lieutenant. And so I went through that program. I sent that email out to somebody there. And I asked them like, hey, I'm deaf and I was wondering if there's anything I can do with you to, share, you know, your knowledge with some students of mine. So I got back a response email, and it wasn't your typical "sorry you can't, sir, you're deaf." I got an intriguing response. It said, maybe we can work something out with you. So for the first time, even though I already had a degree, I was just motivated to go into that program. And with that aside, all of my life, I've talked to people, listened to their experiences, and I've even wrote a paper about all the information I've compiled. And it's an 80-page research paper. So here in America, we've had deaf soldiers in our military before. And during the Texas Independence War, there's a gentleman by the name of Deaf Smith who helped out Texas gain independence from Mexico. And there was a civil war. During our Civil War, we've had soldiers from both the Union and the Confederacy who served. And even as recent as World War II, we've had soldiers that did serve our country during World War II. Even though we're rare, we did have soldiers that were deaf. So another thing I like to bring up are the deaf Israeli soldiers and their jobs not in combat, but behind the lines doing supportive roles. And there are many jobs they can do, such as working with intelligence, computers, supply, different jobs. There are many jobs they can do. You might think, how can those soldiers communicate with one another? with deaf and, non-deaf individuals. Sure, yeah, they can lip read, they can gesture, they can learn some sign. There's some soldiers that know sign. They can text, you can email, the same thing as everybody else. You don't really need special treatment. And, sometimes, some accommodations need to be made, such as getting interpreters. But they don't need interpreters to follow them every single day. And the Israeli army, they tend to be in small groups and train within those groups. And so they learn how to communicate with one another. And so there's virtually no need for an interpreter. So I've met this one woman, the name of Kim. And so in my paper I talked about people who are disabled who are enlisted in the military. And for one example, there's Captain Luckett. He was involved in an explosion that took his leg, and he recovered. But now he has a prosthetic leg. And so he's even been back in combat, and he's there in Afghanistan right now. And guess what? He's not the only one. There are 40 other soldiers just like him that have amputated limbs that were in combat, and they're still doing their jobs today. And there's this one blind soldier who was in Iraq, and he was involved in a car explosion where it, took his eyesight. And he didn't get discharged from the army. He's still in the army today, and he's working at a hospital there, helping other soldiers. There's this other soldier who was in combat who became deaf in one ear back in Iraq. And now he's even set up a school in Iraq for the deaf. So let me ask you this. So, yeah, we have disabled soldiers in our military today. Why can't civilians who want to become soldiers get into the military? So there are many jobs that the military has to offer, and 80% of them, they're non-combative. They're jobs that deaf people can do. Such me, for example, I wanted to get into intelligence, but there are many other jobs. You can get in finances, in computer technologies. So another thing I like to talk about is that the Israeli soldiers, that as long as you have the skill and capability, the Israeli military is willing to accept you. And there are many jobs that the military there has to offer that are 8% that are not combative, and the U.S. military still has disabled soldiers in the military right now. And so can deaf people get enlisted into our military? Of course they can. There's no doubt about it. Now I'm going to talk to you about my ROTC experience. So I've been ROTC up until now. I'm at my alma mater for the first time. They've ever had a deaf cadet. They've never had a deaf cadet in their program before. So of course it was kind of awkward. Like, wow, this guy's deaf. Can he really do all these things? How do we communicate with him? And so, of course, it was a natural response from them. Natural way to think about it. And on top of that, it was really tough for me too. I was going to get into the army and learn this whole new world, military jargon and, this new culture. And so it was a slow progression. I had to learn how to work with these other people. And well, so the first day of class, I didn't have a uniform. Everybody else had one. And I turned that, I had to wake up every morning at about 3:30 for PT, and then Fridays there would be labs, and on the weekends, there'd be even more training. So I would show up in the morning, really early, with no uniform, ready to go. And I was told by some people, like, you don't have to be here, you don't have to participate, you know. But I would still wake up every morning and go there for training. And they would still tell me, like, no, you don't have to be here for your labs and training. So I was like, okay, I get it. So I would, like, sit and I'd still watch the other cadets. That's fine. It's fine with that. So I'd show up on Friday, and they would have a marching drill, how to stand formation and salute. And so I gave it a shot one day. I got up there, and I figured it would be best if I were behind everybody else so I can follow them. But the officer who, so to speak, opened the door for me with that email, He got my attention and said, no, you're going to be in the front line. If you're going to be a soldier, you're going to learn the commands yourself. You're going to follow them. You're not going to follow other people. You're going to learn them yourself. So I was surprised by how he came up to me and told me all that. So that really impressed me. And for a couple of weeks, even though I had no uniform, telling me like I can't do certain things. There was this one day, I had this one officer in uniform came up to me and said like, hey, Cadet, I see that your motivation, I see that you give it your all. You're 110%, and you're very motivated, so I'm going to give you a uniform. So I went along with them into this military warehouse full of uniforms. And so there were 2 duffel bags. They're full of army gear. Your helmets, your camo vests, your rifles, bags, everything that I would need. Everything everybody else had. So I have to tell you all, every morning, that getting up, putting on that uniform, I felt honored to wear that uniform. So every day, going to training, and, it was a little weird the first time, a little awkward the first time. You know, I had to figure things out. And I was the last one to do many tasks. And so there's this Army military training that there's this one time we got into this one helicopter. It came down, landed in the field, and we all marched to get into that um, helicopter. I was told by I was told that I can't do it because if he were to yell orders at me, I wouldn't be able to hear him. So even though I had my vest on, I had my parachute back on, you know, I, he tried to convince me I can't do it. But at the last second, he said, "Get on there, get on board, get on there." And so I went along with everybody else. I didn't feel separated. I was involved with everything they did. There was no division within these cadets. So this is really my passion. I love this so much. And here's some pictures, and then I'll have some pictures to show you. So this is the name of my company. So that sergeant of mine, who's head of the program, he was questioning, some of my abilities at first, but I proved him wrong. And I have some cadets that I work with that we developed a strong sense of family, a camaraderie, like a brotherhood, you know, within that company, which I figure out had become soldiers and leaders, how to do recon strategy, how to explode landmines over the mountains. And yeah, we've developed a camaraderie, and I really thank the people that stuck by me through this. And definitely, it was tough to even find an interpreter to get up so early in the morning to be there to interpret for me. And so that officer right there, he's still there. His name is Lieutenant Mendoza. And there's the interpreter before class started. And that was this past fall, starting training. Then there is Lieutenant Colonel Phelps in that picture right there, who is a higher ranking officer for my company. And every time I'd see him, I just felt like a real soldier. And on top of that, he never saw my deafness. He saw my skill and capability. He saw me for me, and I really respect that. And so they're in that craft right there, and there's some other cadets, some soldiers, interpreters. You know, she really helped me out in my classes. And this one class in Las Vegas, we went to do some training over there. Went to swim, we'd run laps, and work on our marksmanship. And I would meet all the requirements. I have a badge to prove it. And there's one sergeant that he really motivated me to keep on running. And so we would also run with our rucksacks for about a half a mile. There's here are my fellow cadets over here. And I've even developed sign names for them because I've known them for such a long time. Reynolds, is a sign name because he's always ironic. He's a veteran from Iraq and Afghanistan. Then Fitzo, this is his sign name because he's always competitive and he's very intelligent. And then Scarvy, in top of our class, he has a scar on the side of his face. That's why we gave him that sign name. And so this man right here, he's a chief representative, next to Obama, and to talk to him about, people with disabilities. And so our class even got to see him give a speech in Las Vegas. There are two people in front of me that the representative got to meet. He said, "Oh, nice to meet you." Shook his hand. And the representative's kind of set back, by the fact that I signed to him. But I don't even think he knows that I'm deaf because he proceeded to shake the other soldier's hands. So getting involved with all the ROTC, all of the program, up until about 2 weeks ago, yes, recently just happened. ROTC, if you didn't know, has four levels. I've completed the two first levels, and I was about to start the third one this fall. But with the third level, you must pass a medical exam. And obviously, I won't be able to pass that exam. I would fail it because I cannot hear. So I sat down with my officer and said that you can't continue with, PT training. You can't go to level 3. You can't go to the labs. You can't go to field training. You can't do a lot of things that you once were able to do. So you also have to give a uniform back. You know, that really affected me. So my officer, he was just saying the same thing. Why? Colonel Phelps, he tried to work with some of the higher ups, some negotiations, saying this gentleman, he passed all of his exams, he's doing really well. But they keep on denying and saying, like, it's policy, we can't let him in. Can't let him proceed. So again, my officer try to find different ways, find out, like, hey, I'm the only deaf cadet the program's ever seen. For 4 years, like I'm supposed to graduate this coming up May, and I'm not able to even join the army because I'm deaf. But there are people or officers who don't have a problem with it, and they would change the policies. So we're talking with Congress. We're talking to Henry Waxman. To start again, move on a few things. Try to help me out, try to gain support. But I don't know. Before, black people couldn't join the military, and now they're allowed to. Same thing with women; they're forbidden. Now we have women in the military. So times have changed, and now it's our time, and our time is now. Hooyah!